What's up, y'all? I've noticed as time has gone on, like these past few years, I've noticed everyone, and I mean everyone, suddenly wishes that they grew up in the early 2000s. Like even people who were like 3 years old in 2007 are posting videos like, "Take me back, life hits different. I wish I grew up in this era." It's like, bro, you were in diapers. What do you mean take me back? But the crazy thing is, I completely get it. And I've seen the videos of like compilations like POV, you grew up in the early 2000s, and like it was showing compilations of like elementary school during Christmas time, or like waiting for the bus during an autumn morning, and it's like, damn. And it's showing the games you used to play back then that I still honestly play. I think there's just something about the early 2000s that feels warm, comforting, and human and simple, and it's like the world still had soul, and it did. And now it's like everything feels overstimulating, chaotic, lonely, fake, and people look back at that era like it's some kind of lost paradise, because in a way it kind of is. So I want to dive into why the early 2000s like feels more real than modern life today. Nostalgia is even hitting harder than ever right now, especially for a lot of us in Gen Z growing up, and our generation desperately misses a time that some of them barely even got to experience. I think the early 2000s were the last real offline childhood as well. Like, I'm a '01 baby. We had no smartphones, no TikTok, no constant notifications, no infinite scrolling. I didn't even have a phone till I was like almost 14, I think. And back then we had the iPhone 4, which I thought was crazy back then. It's weird. If you were born even, I'd say all the way into like 2004, maybe 2005, you were the last of that era that didn't have smartphones and an iPhone 8 when you were in 3rd grade. Me personally, I was strapped up with the DS in like 2nd grade. And I had an iPod Touch as well, and I'd always be playing 808s and Heartbreaks and Graduation on there too. Love that shit. And those were the days, if you wanted to hang out with someone, you had to physically go to their house. And I remember actually before phones and a few of my friends got Xbox Live, that's how some of us would communicate too, if we didn't show up to each other's houses. And if you wanted entertainment, you didn't have 20 streaming services and 10 million creators and 24/7 content, or 50 apps fighting for your attention. I remember on Nickelodeon or on the TV, whatever is playing, that's what you're gonna watch. I remember having a DVR, was able to record stuff. That was huge for me, so I could actually go back and watch what I wanted to watch sometimes. It's just crazy, the simpler things in life, and how much it blew my mind back then. You know, we had the Saturday morning cartoons at Disney Channel, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Blockbuster, Game Boy, Nintendo DS, like whatever your older sibling was watching. I remember another experience in like 2006 or 2007, like as far back as I can remember. I remember my older brother got the Xbox 360, and Dead Rising was one of the launch titles for that console, if y'all remember that game. And I remember staying up with him and his friends all night when I was like super young, and they were playing the Dead Rising, and we saw like the clown psychopath you have to fight and everything, and it was just like so fascinating. And those are just core experiences, and I don't feel like kids today are ever going to get that. Video games are a big part of my childhood, but life was not happening on the screen. It was happening in front of you. And this was the last generation of kids who actually got bored. I remember being bored as well, a lot. And we used our imagination. And now kids just get bored and immediately open TikTok. Like we supplement the boredom today just for constant stimulation. Again, we didn't have that back then. And life was a lot slower in a good way. Like the early 2000s were slow, and not slow as in like boring, but it was more peaceful. Like I said, the world felt a lot more warm back then. Like if you wanted to listen to music, you just downloaded it on LimeWire and prayed your computer didn't explode, or download it on your iPod Touch. If you wanted movie spoilers, you had to wait until someone at school told you. And if you wanted to know if your crush liked you, you had to figure that one out on your own. There was anticipation behind all this stuff. There was patience, there was mystery. And with everything today just being so instant, it's just instant dopamine, instant information, instant entertainment, instant overstimulation. Modern life is just like all gas, no brakes. And the early 2000s had brakes. And I think that's a fundamental aspect that a lot of us miss. I remember being a kid, and the biggest excitement in my day was getting out of school and going outside, riding my bike, begging my mom for McDonald's, playing PS2 or the Xbox, and watching Cartoon Network, having sleepovers, trading Pokemon cards, staying up too late, watching a movie on the DVD. You didn't have to record it, post it, or caption it, or care what anyone thought of it. We just lived. And it wasn't perfect, but it felt real. And where things get a little deeper is that people think nostalgia is about missing the past, and it's not necessarily. Like, nostalgia is about being dissatisfied with the present, actually. I think that's an aspect a lot of us overlook. And we don't miss the VHS tapes or the dial-up internet or flip phones or whatever it might be. We just miss the simplicity, the slower days, the real friendships, the childhood innocence, the human connection, and not being constantly compared to everyone on social media. We miss life before all the noise. in the early 2000s represents something that we're starving for right now. And it's a time before the internet rewired our brains completely. And with how everything is set up today, you didn't know what a million people were doing. We didn't have a highlight reel of everyone's lives. We weren't competing with influencers, algorithms, and unrealistic standards. We just were existing. And our brain was actually calm. But even around like 2010 to 2012, that's when everything kind of started to change. Or at least like the foundation was laid out for kind of what turned into today. So the iPhone became mainstream, the social media started to blow up, YouTube took over. But I think YouTube was already kind of, I'd say by 2009 to 2010 it was doing its thing. You know, I was watching it just as far back even before that. And then Instagram launched, and then TikTok eventually dominated. And suddenly, like, a lot of people's attention spans collapsed once the scrolling started, and the constant entertainment and stimulation, the dopamine systems were rewired, and we became addicted to stimulation. We lost the ability to be bored. We lost the ability to be present. We became hyper aware of how others live. Like, comparison replaced connection. Performance replaced authenticity. Like, it just got worse over time. I'm telling you. I don't think, even back in like 2015, this shit was not as bad as what it is right now. Like, I've noticed it really bad, I think, ever since the pandemic. And now the early 2000s feel magical. I think they were to begin with, but especially in today's world, it feels very magical now. And because it was truly the last era before the digital takeover. That's why I think being born in like early 2000s, late 90s, whatever, is such an interesting time to have been born. And we saw the transition. And maybe people aren't actually nostalgic for the 2000s. They're nostalgic for themselves, for a better version of life that felt human, because by no means was it perfect. But look around, you know, we have unlimited content, but a lot of us are still bored. We have unlimited connection, but loneliness is worse than ever right now. We have unlimited convenience, but we're still exhausted. We have unlimited information, but we're just overwhelmed. We don't want the early 2000s because they were better, although I do think it really is. We just want them because they didn't feel like this. And there was less pressure, a lot less noise, a lot less comparison, a lot less overstimulation, less existential dread, less chaos, and just less everything. Life had room to breathe, and today it's one thing after another, it seems like. Sometimes I'll hear like a 2000s song and like a Britney Spears hit or Neo track or whatever, or even early Justin Timberlake, like whatever it might be, and my brain just immediately relaxes. It's like it reminds me of a time before adulthood anxiety, before the constant urge to perform, before the algorithms decided our lives, and before everything sped up. It's not the song that we miss, it's just a feeling we had when we heard it. You know, we associate a lot of the feelings we had with everything that was going on back then. And the real reason we miss that era is we aren't longing for a decade. We're longing for simplicity and connection, childhood, innocence, stability, slower living, life without constant comparison, and human moments. And the early 2000s symbolizes a life that feels impossible right now. And I think that's why we romanticize it. And that's why people who didn't even grow up then still feel drawn to it. And it represents a world that we desperately wish still existed. And there's something else that changed too, the creativity. The early 2000s had unique fashion. It had weird movies, diverse music, new genres, bold experimentation, silly commercials, weird internet culture. Everything was just way less algorithm driven. We didn't understand what that was back then. And now everything is so optimized and aesthetic and formulaic and trend based, corporate, algorithm approved, and life just lost its soul because of that. And the 2000s reminded us of what that soul felt like. I think it's a fear too behind all of us. Like the world doesn't seem like it's becoming a better place, and it seems like there's a lot of things that are gonna have to crash and burn before anything gets better. I don't think we're gonna see it for quite a while. I have no idea what's in store for us, but I don't know. So yeah, I mean, everyone suddenly wishes they grew up in the early 2000s, and I wouldn't honestly say suddenly. I feel like a lot of people have been feeling this way for a bit, and I've just been seeing it more and more over the past like 2-3 years. And it's not because the decade was perfect. It definitely was not. And it wasn't because it was magical or because it was flawless. The truth is, a lot of us who were like in elementary school during that time, or maybe even a little bit younger, a little bit older, a lot of us have grown up and we have real adult responsibilities now, and we got thrown into a world that seems very unstable economically and culturally and everything right now. And I think a lot of us just don't know what to do with that information. We look back on it like it was magical because of a lot of our childhood experiences. Even the early 2010s felt that way. I still think 2015, 2016 were some of the most goated years. But this represents the last time life felt simple and human. And it was all before the noise, before the anxiety, and before the overstimulation, before the endless comparison, and before the algorithm started shaping people's personalities, and before social media started feeling like fucking radiation. And it was just the last era where childhood felt like childhood, and I just can't imagine growing up today as a kid, you know? It's just so different. You got the Fortnite babies and the iPad babies and everything. Oh my god, it's crazy. But yeah, that's really all I got. If this video resonated, drop a comment, subscribe, and let me know which era you want to break down next, or what we're going to talk about next. And hey, if you missed that time, you're not crazy at all. It's a lot of us that feel the same. We all miss a world that doesn't exist anymore, but that doesn't mean we can't create pieces of it again. So yeah, I'll see y'all in the next one.